If you're a fan of Oris like myself, then this watch might be right up your alley, especially if you like vintage designed watches. You see, the last time Oris produced a bullseye design in a watch was nearly 30 years ago. And now they've just released this absolute banger. And in the hand, it has not disappointed. And as a watch enthusiast or hobbyist, that really appeals to me, both visually as well as form and function. And this is such a watch. Let's dive in. I've had a few Oris watches in my personal collection over the years. I've always had a soft spot for some of their designs, especially their vintage designs, and some of the common denominators with their watches which I've found that I enjoyed, and they share similar traits, is things like legibility. You see, the watches that I've had an experience from this brand have been extremely easy to read, to get a gauge of the time just by looking at that watch first glance, first time. And ideally that should be the highest priority of any watch. Secondly, I've also liked the superb styling. Great designs, both ergonomically and historically, because I've been around watches long enough to know that there is nothing new under the sun. The majority of brands seem to have got their watch designs right from inception. Whether it was the 1930s, the 1960s, they got it right the first time. These watches seem to have a particular flair about them and a very timeless feel. And in my eyes, this is what Oris has done here with this model. They've simply tweaked an already beautiful watch and just made it better. Now, one thing that I do look for in a watch when it comes to its movement is reliability. And this is one of my arguments over the years regarding in-house movements. Because if you go back about 15 or 20 years, the majority of Swiss brands were using tried and tested off-the-shelf Swiss movements and no one complained. In fact, we were happy. We were happy because the watches worked, and they worked very, very well, and they weren't expensive. They were reliable and the parts were readily available when it came to service time. And this is one of the things that I still like about Oris today. They've not stayed behind. They've managed to create their own in-house movements for some of their models, but they've also retained the originality of off-the-shelf movements for certain models. ETA movements, or in this case a top-grade Solita, whilst adding their own touch and finishing to personalise it to the brand. And for me, it just makes the brand a lot more attainable. And I say this because I don't know if you guys have noticed lately, but watches seem to become very expensive from every brand, especially a lot of the Swiss stuff. It's ridiculous. You know, I find myself saying 10 grand or 15 grand and it rolls off the tongue, and I don't have any hesitations and I don't even flinch, and I'm thinking, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, guys. Now maybe we've been desensitized or conditioned to thinking that that's what we need to spend to get a good watch. And it's like it's become the new norm. And for me, when a brand like Oris manages to draw upon its deep historical background with an off-the-shelf traditional Swiss movement, tried and tested, it basically brings the price down to a much more affordable range for the masses. And that is something that does make me happy. Now, for those that are not in the know, this model is the Big Crown pointer date, and the original design first came into fruition back in 1938. The fact that the crown is oversized and the watch offers exceptional legibility, this was an ideal choice for the pilots of that era. Visually for me, the icing on the cake is that bullseye, a layout that I haven't seen from Oris for nearly 30 years. And having had this watch in the hand for about a week now, I've got to tell you, this is really lovely to look at. Now, unfortunately for me, I have to send this watch back. I was in the city last week and popped into the Oris boutique on Collins Street. I introduced myself, I met the staff there, and I said, guys, I really want to check this watch out. I had a look at it. I fell in love straight away. I thought, you know what, I want to get this on the channel. I want to show you guys. I managed to walk out of the store without any money exchanged, and now the watch is here with me, which is great. But I've got to give it back. Nonetheless, looking closer at this watch, what I've experienced on the wrist and in the hand and in its visuals, this watch has been very interesting to say the least. Because that striking sector dial in a two-tone black and cream, that caught my attention straight off the bat. For me, it's bold enough to be striking, and yet I also found it subtle enough to show beautiful refinements in its design and overall execution. This looks and feels every bit as good as a Swiss watch brand should, and rightly so. But putting the hero, which is that dial, aside, even that coin-edged bezel and coin-edged case back are another standout for me. Because if I turn the watch over, you'll notice the case back shows the same detail of coin edging as that front bezel. and married up with the large fluted crown, I get very strong vibes of a vintage pilot watch from back in the day, but with today's execution and refinement, it's done beautifully. And whilst we're on that case back, looking through that crystal, you can see there's a top grade Sellita SW200. It's around 41 hours of power reserve, 4 Hz, obviously with Oris's signature touches and finishing, that custom rotor. I think an ideal choice for a watch like this, and this particular one has been running very healthily all week, so I've got no complaints in that department. And obviously not having an in-house movement, it's managed to keep the price down. And speaking of the price, this watch comes in at 3,800 Australian dollars. Yes, we Australians do have our own currency, that's around 2,500 USD. Now that's not an inexpensive watch by any means, but it's way more affordable than some of the offerings I've seen lately from a lot of the other Swiss manufacturers. So putting all things into perspective, I think it's all relative. Now looking at the profile of this watch, I've really enjoyed its sleekness, the crystal design itself, the sapphire. It doesn't have too much distortion at the edges. It seems to follow that taper of the case shape quite nicely, and legibility has been an absolute dream. Because every time I've looked down at my wrist to read the time, it's been a super easy read. And those Arabics and that handset also feature Swiss Superluminova. So if I dim the lights, you'll notice that that handset is the real hero here. It would have been nice for those Arabics to be able to catch up, and being a vintage style watch, I wasn't expecting dive loom here, but I will give credit to that handset, it's doing a really good job. For me, having handled this watch for the week, the attention to finer details, the overall finishing, down to the way the watch makes you feel on the wrist, I can say with all assurity, I've had watches in my hand that have cost twice as much as this and have not delivered the same results in the area of romance, finesse, legibility, and overall wearing experience. Now, as with all watches, there is no perfect watch. I've not found one yet in all these years, and this one here as well is not exempt. I do have a gripes or room for improvement section. What is it that I would change or tweak on this watch if I could, if I had a chance? First and foremost, as I just spoke, that loom, I think the handset is really well done, but just a little bit more application on those numbers would have been quite welcomed here. Next for me, and this is really nitpicking, there is the slightest, and I say slightest hint of blue anti-reflective coating on that crystal. It's so subtle. I'm mentioning it for you guys. It hasn't bothered me throughout the week, but being a colorist, a professional photographer, I look for colors all day, and it's one of the things that I did notice, but in most scenarios, you'll be hard pushed to find it. It's not distracting, and the sapphire and its overall coating seem to be doing a great job anyway, so no real complaints there at all. Just really nitpicking in that department. Now, one thing that I did find interesting about this watch is that crown. I love the crown, I love its feel, its ergonomics, the latch down, the screw down experience, it's good. It's got a screw down crown. My question to Oris, did it really need it? It's only 50 meters of water resistance, so with a screw down crown, ideally I would have loved to see 100 meters of water resistance on this watch, but potentially they could have got away with not putting a screw down crown, and I think in this case they easily could have kept that 50 meters of water resistance. And the last thing I want to mention in this review, that leather strap is lovely, it's been comfortable. It's made from sustainably sourced deer leather in Switzerland. Now, as with all leather, how long will it last? It's got a couple of creases. I've been wearing it for the week. Sorry, Oris, forgive me. You're going to have to replace the strap on this when I return this watch, but there's no other way to enjoy it. I was going to put it on my own straps. I thought, you know what? I'll enjoy it for how it is. It's been great. But again, bear in mind that leather straps, how long they last, 6 months, a year, 2, depends on how you use them. Again, just sharing it with you guys. So as far as I'm concerned, this watch has been an absolute gem. If you're looking for a very cool piece that wears well on the wrist, this is really something to pay close attention to, especially for the fact that it's petite at 38mm and it's a vintage pilot style watch. The impression that's left with me that it's a beautiful looking timeless design, easy to read, easy to get along with, from a very long standing reputable brand, and it's one of those watches that can satisfy on so many levels without really putting a massive dent in their back pocket. So I hope you enjoyed that. I've definitely enjoyed my time with this watch. Again, thank you to the guys at the Oris Boutique in Melbourne for loaning me this watch. Maybe I should call in sick this week and next just to spend a few extra days with this little beauty before it finally has to go back to its home. Be well, be safe, continue to enjoy this hobby and one another, and we'll see you in the next one.